friends. It's time for Ready Readers. I'm ready to read. Are you ready to read? Let's get ready together. I have a little exercise that we can do that gets our wiggle and waggles out. So on this one, you wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes, and you wiggle your shoulders and you wiggle your nose. Now there's no more wiggles left in me. I'm going to be as still as can be. So let's do it together. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, wiggle your shoulders, and wiggle your nose. Now there's no more wiggles left in me. I'm going to be as still as can be. And as long as we're being still, let's take a deep breath and blow it out. That felt great. Today's book is Mrs. Honey's Hat. It's by Pam Adams. And Pam Adams is the author and the illustrator. She wrote the book and drew all the pictures. And Mrs. Honey's Hat, what do you think it's about? You're right, Mrs. Honey's Hat. Look at all the things in Mrs. Honey's hat. She's got buttercup flowers and feathers and bows and shells and everything. And the silly part about this book is when the book starts, she's got all those things in her hat. And when the book's done, this is what's going to be in her hat. Seaweed and fish bones and eggs and cowbells and gum and cobwebs. Let's see now that happens. Mrs. Honey's Hat. Mrs. Honey had a hat. On Monday, she wore it when she took her grandson Peter to the park. She bought him some bubble gum, and she sat on a bench with her knitting. And there's Mrs. Honey with her knitting, and Peter with his bubble gum, and he even has a bow and arrow. And there's some feathers, and there's some bubble gum. Peter thought, those feathers would make my arrows fly better. So he pulled those feathers off the hat, and his bubble gum stuck to the brim. The brim's the top of the hat, right on the front part. But you know what? But Mrs. Honey didn't notice. She didn't know he was doing that. On Tuesday, Mrs. Honey wore her hat to visit her friend. They sat in the garden and under a shade tree and ate some cakes with some little birdies sitting on the grass. So it said Monday and Tuesday. I bet we're going to go through her week. So what comes after Tuesday? Wednesday. But we're going to have to wait till Wednesday because you're going to find out what happened to those little birds and her hat. Some birds flew down to pick up the crumbs. Those cherries looked good, they chirped. Chirp, 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 chirp. So they flew off with them. And one little bird left some eggs behind. You see the birds flew off with the cherries, and this one little bird left some eggs behind. Do you think she noticed? I don't think so because it says, but Mrs. Honey didn't notice. Now, after Tuesday comes Wednesday. Where'd she go? You're right, she went to the beach. On Wednesday, Mrs. Honey spent a day at the seaside, which is like a beach. Same thing. The sun shone and the winter was just right for paddling. Mrs. Honey felt very happy. She's got her feet in the water and relaxing. She's got her hat on her head. People behind her are building sand castles and sitting on umbrellas. Everybody's having a great time. Whew, she must have gotten tired. Afterwards, Mrs. Honey took her hat and sat in the sun. A hermit crab thought that shell would make a nice home for me. So he scuttled away with the shell and left some seaweed behind. You see that? There is the hermit crab, and he's taking the shell and he's leaving the seaweed. He's going to put it on the hat. And there's the shell and the seaweed. Huh, you know what it says down here? But Mrs. Honey didn't notice. Can you say that? But Mrs. Honey didn't notice. On Thursday, Mrs. Honey picked some dandelions to make some wine. It was very hard work, and she took off her hat and put it on the fence. Here's a cow up here. What's going on with that cow, I wonder?
Ooh, what's going on with you?
Well, a cow in the field saw the hat on the fence and said, "What a beautiful big buttercups." She mooed. So she took a mouthful and her bell fell off onto Mrs. Honey's hat. She's taken a whole mouthful of the flowers and her bell fell off right on Mrs. Honey's hat. I don't think she noticed, because do you know what it says? But Mrs. Honey didn't notice. You're so smart you remembered that. On Friday, Mrs. Honey went to an old castle. "Just look at those cobwebs," she exclaimed. "This place could use with a good clean." Oh, look what happens in the castle. Do you see what's happening on her head? What is that? It's a spider that dropped down onto her hat. "Hurrah," he said, "this lace will make a good strong cobweb." So he hurried away with the lace and he left his old cobwebs right behind. And what do you think? Did she notice? No, because it says, but Mrs. Honey didn't notice. How could all that happen and she didn't notice? She was so busy looking around, I guess she didn't notice. On Saturday, Mrs. Honey took her cat to a cat show. There were all sorts of fine cats, but she hoped that hers would win first prize. Look at those cats, all fancied up. Do you know what happened? Look at this cat up here. An alley cat's on Mrs. Honey's hat through the window. That ribbon might help me win first prize, he thought. So he pulled it from the hat and left some fish bones behind. Ooh, fish bones. That doesn't seem like a very good trade. Did she notice? No, because what does it say? But Mrs. Honey didn't notice. You can read part of the book now. On Sunday, do you see Mrs. Honey's hat? On Sunday, Mrs. Honey went to church. Everyone seemed to be staring at her. Whatever can it be, she wondered. Perhaps it's time I bought a new hat. Look at that hat. Do you remember all the things that were traded? The bell and the eggs and the fish bones and the seaweed. So many things. So what did she do? After services, she went home and looked in the mirror. Then she noticed the bubble gum and the eggs, the seaweed, the bell, the cobwebs, and the fish bones. Goodness, she said, I've got a new hat. But you know what? It says here, she wasn't sure that she liked it. She might have to think about that for a little bit. And then while she's thinking, we can say the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those are 6 of the days. Let's say them together. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And remember, Sunday's coming up because that makes 7. And here's all the things that were traded. So on Sunday, Mrs. Honey decided that she really liked what she had. And instead of saying, I've got a hat, she said, I've got a new hat. And she seems very happy with it. The end. Thanks for sharing the story with me. It's called Mrs. Honey's Hat by Pam Adams. Goodbye.